Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of the Alignment, the webinar which asks our speakers to align on a topic related to localization. Today's topic is one of the big ones. It is supercharging localization speed and scale without compromising quality. Obviously, it is something that everybody has to do in their job as a localization program manager or whatever it is. There's always that tension between speed and quality. So it is great to get to sink our teeth into the into the issue finally. My name's Adam. I am going to be your host for the webinar. We've got a really tight webinar today. We've got 6 wonderful speakers, but before we kind of dive into who they are, I'm just going to very briefly talk about global app testing and who we are and why we are doing this. So Global App Testing is a QA and globalization data company. We help some of the biggest software businesses in the world improve their understanding of local user experiences. So that's anything from functional QA through to localization QA or rapid turnaround UX surveys. The through line is that we help businesses understand the experiences that local users are having anywhere in the world from this idea of global growth. And the reason that we have launched this webinar series is because a lot of the work we do is with product teams and engineering teams. And we're not super well known within the globalization, internationalization community. And it is where we do some of our most exciting work. So we wanted to share a little bit of that with you. We also want to listen and to just hear some of the expertise in the room. So in order to do that, we've pioneered a slightly unusual format for the alignment. So apologies if you've been to the last 2, but I will just quickly go through it. The alignment is an unusual kind of webinar. Instead of just a series of talks, what we've asked our speakers to prepare is a really short, to the point talk on a topic that is related to the theme. While they are speaking, what we would love for you to do in the audience is to use the Q&A function in the controls. You can see it's like 2 chat icons talking to one another, to send them questions as they go. We will get to all of the questions at the end and hopefully, I think, have a really good conversation about speed and scale and quality. So today speaking, we've got 6 fantastic panelists. So the first speaker is Abby. Abby is my colleague here at Global App Testing. She is a senior CS manager. She's going to be talking about how the only way to localize at a high quality is to localize fast. Following that, we've got Faye. Faye is the head of content localization at RS Group. If you're not familiar with RS, they provide product and service solutions for industrial and engineering businesses. They're live in 31 countries. So really excited about that. Faye will be telling us why you don't always need translation QA, maybe ruffle a few feathers with her speech. Following that, we have Robert. Robert is a product program manager at HubSpot. He's going to be talking a little bit about building internal alignment and unlocking developer buy-in. If you follow some of our content, you may have seen my interview with Robert that we published earlier this year. It's all about taking HubSpot global in 2013. It's a great interview. You should check it out. Following Robert, we have Nora. Nora is the senior localization program manager at Tesla. She's going to be telling us what a scale-ready team looks like. And then finally, we've got Daphne, the localization operations manager, who will be talking about achieving balance in quality, speed, and scale. To follow all that, I have a few questions for Sarah Basile. Sarah is the product director at XTM. She's going to be talking about saving time and scaling. So there's loads to get through, as you can tell. So without much further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to Abby, our first speaker. Over to you, Abby.
Thanks very much, Adam. Hello, everyone. As Adam mentioned, I am a customer success manager at Global App Testing, and I work with some of our enterprise accounts who are working on quality global growth. When I say quality, I am referring specifically to making products successful and not just available in specific markets. And with that, a lot of our clients are faced with the challenge of, do you want it done fast or if you want it done right? The reason I'm so kind of acutely aware of this is because more than ever, we're being tasked with more complex and comprehensive projects, and as usual, in no time at all. And it's even worse on the client side. So they constantly battle internally between improving speed or improving quality. given the choice, they often choose speed and that wins, but then your quality starts to suffer in the long run, up until the point that the customer then complains and then the battle begins again. In general, we all kind of understand that quality takes time, but how much time are you supposed to dedicate to this? Some of our teams, especially in localization, end up spending so long understanding the problem. By the time they come back with a solution, the priority's already shifted. So even if the research that you have is really extensive and groundbreaking, it is too slow. And in the meantime, your dev team have already released 6 new features and they're measuring the impact on the users. So whilst your dev teams are working even faster, yes, quality should still take time, but possibly much less time. One of the first big global clients that we worked with a few years ago came into localization from a development background. She basically told us that there's this battle between speed and quality, but it's already been solved in software dev. This is basically where Agile comes from, sprints that are focused on much smaller releases, faster iterations, and often failures, but those faster feedback loops from the end user. Not only do you get your product out faster, but you also get improvements out faster too. So in the long run, much higher quality and much sooner. The client that I'm speaking about specifically, she runs localization from a leadership perspective. Her main focus was to help her teams iterate fast in order to grow on a global scale. The switch to Agile was actually easier for her. The challenge was how she could help speed up the research element for those teams and help enable her teams. She knew that local user feedback was critical, but she didn't want the teams to wait for months for it. So that's where we had to help. So to me, this question of how can we localize faster has to be about how you get the voice of the customer. How do we scale that level of feedback, the number of participants, the level of quality, the qualitative insight without impacting the turnaround time of the project, potentially at all. So that's why at Global App Testing, we have amended the way that we work with our localization clients. As they become more agile, so do we. We're typically really quite closely aligned with agile developers. And so we've kind of built this method of we get a build straight away after a sprint and you need the results as soon as humanly possible. And now we're starting to see this more with our localization clients. So every prototype, no matter how many languages or countries or currencies, it's all got local feedback and insights in the kind of exact same turnaround time. So what this means is that my clients are seeing more localization tickets sit within sprint cycles, which might sound like quite a minor thing, but it's a new model that means that on a literally weekly basis, quality optimizations are made for local markets. It is gradual, but it's fast. So our localization clients are continuously and quite noticeably delivering quality as part of their department. And so in 2-week sprints or less, the kind of quality is already being seen around the business. So for this client that I've specifically spoken about, quality doesn't take time in the same way that we're used to. Quality is fast. So I would say that the way to win the battle between quality and speed is to not think of them as polarizing things, but one and the same, which is why, in my opinion, the only way to do it right is to do it fast.
Thank you very much, Abby. I don't want to hog the mic, but I know that I've been asking everybody to ask questions using the Q&A function. Again, if you can do ask questions either to Abby or to somebody else, but I'm going to turn the tables on you by launching a poll and asking you, the audience, a question. This is about quality versus speed. So we have this question, incidentally, in our forthcoming report about the state of localization quality, and we have a broader pool of people answering. The question is, how much do you agree with the following statement? Quality suffers due to pressure to release quickly in my organization. I'm going to hold that poll open through the next speaker, and then we will share the results at the end and talk a little bit about it during the panel debate. Without much further ado, I'm going to hand over to Faye, who's going to be telling us why you don't always need translation QA. Over to you, Faye.
Thank you, Adam, and no pressure. Bearing in mind that there will be a lot of people in the audience with the QA in their job title. So I'm going to take advantage of the next few minutes to justify myself and throw out some challenges and new ways of thinking and doing things as well. So this is Faye. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from King's Cross, London. And I'm the head of content localization at RS Group, formerly known as RS Components. And thank you very very much, Adam, for bringing the context of our business as well. Shall we start from a quick question? How many of you have been asked this question? Is this machine or human translation? I put my hands up for myself, but only speaking for myself many times. And I think that would be probably the top 3 questions I've been asked during my career as a localization manager. The reason that I wanted to bring this up is I do see or observe a good level of attention or focus on the process or the how things are being done bit over the result, the outcome that we want to drive by doing certain things. So it is very rare that people say to me, Faye, I want this for my customers. How do we get there? And it is the same logic or the same approach or very similar approach when we come to that LQA, linguistic QA scenario. It is almost feeling like it's getting into a habit, let's do it. And for many times, my colleagues have mentioned to me, we have to review everything. You may want to review everything or may try to review everything, but do you actually need to? And there is a fundamental difference between whether you want to review something or try to review everything than whether you need to. So it is more about whether you are driven or too drawn into the process and go down that deep route of analyzing what is the advantage, a disadvantage, risk and opportunities. For example, machine versus human, go down that route, or can we have our outcome defined clearly upfront and then work the way back? How do we get there? So this is, the challenge and the question I like to throw out to my peers in the localization industry. How would we be able to have a purpose-led and a output-driven decision on whether we do LQA or not? It is very much like using your sat nav. So what do we do when we open up a sat nav for Google Maps or whatever software that you use? We type into the destination first, right? And then we'll be given a few options of what are the possible routes and the time that is going to take. So it will be this final decision of which route you're going to go down is going to be depending on the purpose of your journey. So maybe you're going to choose a windy country road because you want to enjoy the beautiful scenery alongside, but it's going to take you a long time. Or you need to be on time for a important business meeting. So you're going to go down to the boring motorway because you need to be on time and save time on driving on that windy country roads. So that would be also based on the purpose of what you're trying to achieve after all. So again, if you're kind of coming with me now, how are we be able to make that purpose-led and outcome-driven decision? The diplomatic answer for me today is it really depends. I don't mean it. But again, whether you are on the LSP side, serving your customers, external customers, or you are on the enterprise side, helping your internal colleagues getting their translation and language services done, whether you're at the starting point where you haven't got anything yet, or you're trying to refine your journey, here are a few questions we can ask ourselves. And it will be the same questions that you're going to change your answers based on different timings and the journeys as your team, yourself, and your company go through. So the first one would be, ultimately, whatever we do is for our customers, right? Or for your customers' customers. What is important for your customers and how important that is? For example, if you're a travel agency trying to localize your travel website, you will have everything that is customer facing, and then there will be elements of the navigation of your site, and there will be some backup documents, help center, Q&A, content like that. Obviously, the level of difference of those content, of those translations will be different for your customers. And that is one of the questions and one of the most important questions I would like to throw out. What is important to your customers and how important that is to them? The second one we can think about is very specific to your industry? Is it very specific to your business? And how easily we could get that wrong and how wrong it could get to. We probably don't want to go down that route. For example, if you're a pharmaceutical company and accuracy, quality is your life, and they will be coming with some legal impacts if something gets done wrongly. So you not only want to spend time on QA, but you may also want to explore different ways of doing that at a QA. Not only doing the review, but maybe doing back translation, comparing the English versions or different source versions as well. So that would be another challenge. Or, you know, if you're a business like ours, we love our acronyms, by the way, and we acronymize things as we create them as we go. So if an internal person like myself couldn't keep up with all these new acronyms, how confident I would be to have an external linguist to get this acronym translated correctly? So have a think about if it's specific to business, to industry, and then how that it is, you know, a specific level of that. And lastly, whether this is aligned to your content or language strategy or your company culture. It might sound a little bit of vague for the LSP you know, audience here, but if you're coming from an enterprise point of view, most likely you are a global company, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be doing localization. So even talking to our internal colleagues, not to our customers, you know, there will be policy that English is a business language, everybody speaks English, or, you know, like RS, we've spent a lot of time and effort making sure that colleagues, global colleagues from different countries will be comfortable in their native language. Not right or wrong, better or worse policy, but it's just difference. And as subject matter experts ourselves, we need to recognize that difference and make that right decision. So that's pretty much everything I want to say. Just to wrap up, whether on, you know, we're all experts and we know exactly how to do things right, but it is less often that we challenge ourselves whether this is the right thing to do in the first place. End of the day, behind the scene, it is not just about linguistic QA, it is more about risks and whether we're comfortable to live with that risk. We don't like risk because it makes us uncomfortable. But the point I would like to make here is it's not a matter of avoiding risks, but manage your risk with confidence and manage your risk smartly by knowing what is important to you, your company, and your customers. So that's all from me for today. And if there is questions, comments, thoughts, or challenges, counter challenges, please put them into the chat.
Thank you very much, Faye. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now, so you can no longer vote, but we will share the results at the end. We're running slightly behind, so I'm going to pass straight over to Robert. Over to you, Robert.
Hello, everybody. Very excited to be here. Very excited about this conversation. As Adam mentioned earlier, my name is Robert Bauk. I'm a senior manager of program management at HubSpot. I have been at HubSpot since 2013, where I had the fortunate luck to be hired as the first person at the company to really start thinking about globalization, localization, internationalization. And so I've learned a lot. And having come into that role, knowing next to nothing, I might be similar to some of you out there, but I learned a ton. I'm very interested and excited about the fact that we're connecting these two things, alignment and supercharging localization, speed, and scale. Most fundamentally, the alignment part. We tend to think of speed and scale as a technical question oftentimes, when in fact, I think it actually starts at a more fundamental level, which is alignment within your organization or your company. And that's really where my experience at HubSpot has come in very handy when I think about this challenge of speed and scale. First of all, so how does alignment impact your speed and scale? Quite honestly, you don't get to the right questions to ask the organizations that you're working with about their speed, about what they value in speed and scale, if you're not aligned to them already. And so having that alignment up front with the organizations that you're working with across the company, because we know localization is most certainly a team game. Unless you have that alignment, you're oftentimes asking the wrong question about speed and scale. You're defaulting to a technical question and not a question about value. I'm going to give you a couple examples of at HubSpot where we ran into this issue and how we've addressed it. The first one is the fact that, as I mentioned, it's a team sport. So there are multiple organizations as you're going to market that participate in this localization effort. Not every organization does things the same way. At HubSpot, for us, marketing and product operate in a very different way. They operate in a different pace. They operate in different content levels. And so one of the big things we ran into initially was we defaulted to this idea that we needed to come up with this monolithic solution to solve for speed and scale across all of our organizations. As we rolled it out initially, we started to realize that we were meeting some needs in one organization, some needs in another, but we weren't actually meeting all the needs that we had. So we had to take a step back from that mistake and start to really actually focus on alignment across the company. To bring back to the example of marketing and product, the scale at which marketing operates, at HubSpot, if you're familiar with HubSpot, we create a ton of content. That content is on a typical marketing calendar. Conversely, in product, we ship, we go back to what Abby was talking about earlier around Agile. We're actually kind of a step beyond that. We're a continuous development organization. And so we're shipping product, hundreds of times a day, shipping code. And oftentimes a lot of that is front end code. And so we had a very different pace and scale that we needed to meet. But until we had those conversations, those alignment conversations about what each of those organizations valued out of their localization experience, we were coming up with subpar solutions. So really quickly, I got about a minute left. Again, taking it back to this idea, like really connecting the alignment to the speed and scale. Three main things we learned at HubSpot, and one of the things that I've continued to carry along with me, even now that I'm not really working too much in localization, which is take the time to build relationships across the company. Localization is a team sport. Understand the organizations that are participating. Once you do that, once you have those relationships, understand what localization means to those teams. Understand what they're expecting to get out of it. Understanding their threshold for quality and for speed. And then finally, this is when the technical questions come in. Once you have those questions answered or questions asked, you can actually get to better answers around tooling, around processes, and around the speed that they're actually anticipating. So hopefully that's helpful. Again, I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Please ask questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm very pleased to hear you relate the title of the webinar to something. I came up with this webinar title with some help from an automated tool. So that's absolutely delightful.
I'm done, robots.
As Robert says, do ask questions. We've not had any questions yet, but use the Q&A function. They will get put right to the top. We do have some great questions from the catchment forms as people registered for the webinar, so thank you for those. But do just use the Q&A if you have any questions at all, and we'd love to get to them. I am going to hand with no further ado over to Nora. Over to you, Nora.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, Nora.
Okay. So hi everyone. Thanks, Adam, for the introduction. I'm excited to be here. I will continue to talk about preparation for scale and how we can use intelligent content as a method to reduce, duplicate translated content and avoid unnecessary costs. To prepare for scale, yes, we know the localization right now has played a critical role in international growth, and to scale, localization had to be considered as a central team that support all business groups rather than just decentralized teams from the different groups. And we need to make localization goals, which I would say that it's not easy to always achieve a goal, and but it doesn't stop us from making realistic goal or dreamy goal, a short-term goal or long-term goal. And we to be able to do that, we should first start with understand our product and see what our business requirement for, and from there you can develop a strategy and how to support our localization strategy to be able to work faster and reduce the duplicate translated content. We should think of how we going to use our content. If the content can be used a little bit more like in a smart way, like combine technology and human capability, that will save a lot of time and money and effort. Content should be considered as a business access. That's where we come to decide about our content management system and our translation management system, whether we should own it or whether we should outsource it. some company decide to develop their own content management system and transition management system, while some companies decide to just like hire third parties company to do that. The content should be designed for automation because as will help a lot on reuse and retrieval, and that could direct it to the right customer in the right channel, in the right way. We should be able to also think about the localization processes and tools and workflow and have all those things figured out before we decided to take our localization effort to another level. And to be able to do that, I think it's very, very important to come up with a system to streamline on localization knowledge. We can use Confluence, we can use Wiki, or we can use Google Drive, whichever method that you prefer for your organization. But to be able to instead of telling everyone that okay we should do that again and again, if we have a localization knowledge platform that will just like point the person to that page, and it will save you a lot of effort. So to sum up, it's always important to think about your goal before you actually scale, and then you can decide which platform or which tool works best for you. And don't forget to try to reuse your content. That will be very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nora. So finally, our last speaker today is Daphne. Daphne's obviously from Riot Games, which make a load of different games. And she's going to be talking about achieving balance in quality, speed, and scale. I'm going to hand straight over to you, Daphne.
Well, thank you, Adam. Hi, everyone. I'm Daphne Chow, Localization Operations Manager at Riot Games. You might be familiar with Riot from our games like League of Legends, Valorant, and our series Arcane on Netflix, which I highly recommend, especially if you like anime, just like me. Well, I wanted to share with you in the next few minutes in terms of how to achieve balance in quality, speed, and scale in 4 key ways. They're not going to be too far from what other panelists already have touched on, but let's dive into it. So really, for the first and foremost, also has to, second exactly what Rob was saying, foster internal collaboration. It's really crucial to cultivate a sense of ownership among your stakeholders. We're talking about like product development, design, marketing, sales, and customer support. Help them to understand what it takes and why we need to design and build internationalization products and also create localization ready content. Because really, the more we get it right, prioritize it right upstream with our stakeholders, it actually makes significant enhancements in terms of efficiency and also effectiveness for localization later on down the stream. That said, at Riot, we also have dedicated team like localization production team that work very closely with our game team to make sure that internal collaboration, that early conversation is happening upstream. Second of all, develop a robust and healthy vendor network. Really build out strong partnership with your language service provider, no matter it's translation, QA testing, voiceover, or even your TMS partners. Really, I think as we have vendors who are like in our court, and they be able to really handle large volumes of content without, first of all, compromising quality, and also deliver within the SLA that we all agree upon. That's going to help us be able to speed things up and be able to scale long term. At Riot, we also have another group, which is localization operations. We work very closely with vendors and make sure we have that healthy partnership together with our external partners. Thirdly, streamline and centralize processes. Really, the way to do it is to, of course, understand where you are and be able to identify the pain points. And once you do all that, standardize workflows and processes. If you're lucky enough like us that we have, tech teams, engineering teams to support us, then you can take another step, which is, try your best to automate projects, assignments, vendor routing, that kind of thing. And as long as it's things that's like repetitive tasks that you be able to identify and you can automate it, it will help you speed things up. Not only reduce costs, but also ensure more consistent delivery that be able to help the team in general to scale up long term. Last but not least, it has to come back to technology, tools and platforms. Implement tools and platforms, no matter you choose to buy versus build, every organization's situation is really different. Sometimes actually really buying is more sensible and less expensive than building. But in general, utilize those tools to connect with CMS that's powering your websites, and also, the source code repository that your desk is using. Technology-wise, machine translation has been around for a decade, more than a decade. It's for certain content types, as long as you know what kind of quality expectations you're looking for, MT or MTPE is actually the route to go. So I think for companies that are not yet looking into it, honestly, in my opinion, can really be more bold and really take that route. And lastly, it's, platform and system. Like, you are working with all the internal stakeholders. We need to have a way to actually have a system to manage all the incoming localization requests, manage the streamlined communication that we could have with our internal customers and internal, even external partners. So really, I think the balance between speed, quality, and scale, it really varies, again, depending on organization. I think the best approach is to know where you want to be, what the expected output that you want to get, and then work backwards to identify necessary steps to achieve it. So that's really my 2 cents for my section, and pleasure to be here. Very looking forward to the Q&A and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne. And we still haven't had any questions from our live audience. So if you would like to ask any questions, you can direct them to anybody, then you can put them in the Q&A and we'll hop right on them. Yeah, I thought that was fascinating. But I have a couple of questions now for Sarah. So obviously, Sarah, you are the product director at XTM, which is a TMS system for those of you that don't know it. So we've got a couple of questions for you about how that affects your relationship with speed and quality, and how your tooling choices can help ensure that you're managing to achieve on both. I think my first question, so how does your relationship with the TMS system change as you scale, as the amount that you have to deliver grows? Oh, Sarah, I think you're on mute. It's the
sorry, yeah, I was double muted. Yeah. You can hear me now, right?
Yes, can hear you.
Okay, thank you for the heads up. So you didn't miss that much. I was just saying that I think here in this case, really the relationship with the TMS is like human relationship in this case. So really, as you grow, you may want or expect even different things from the other side, right? So for example, what was working for you before may not work for you at a later stage. Inevitably, as you scale or even go through, for example, an M&A process, so acquisitions, right, and mergers, you may need to embed other stakeholders or departments and other workflows in your process. So this means that your TMS also needs to be fully scalable in terms of things like volumes that it can process. It needs also to have a pricing model that still works when volumes become, of course, higher. But you may also require a TMS that has advanced hosting and security options, or additional workflow automation and integration capabilities. So as your team and a program grow, you really need to make sure that the platform represents a collaborative environment that enables you to successfully manage different stakeholders and vendors, freelancers, without necessarily adding manual work. Now you are muted, Adam.
There you are. Turn it right back on myself. It's because I never click mute, and then sirens are wailing past. Sorry about that. So second question then. When we think about speed, one of the things that one of the ways we can approach that is thinking about kind of time wasting and those buckets of things that we do that might waste our valuable time. what are some of the primary time waste factors that you think localization teams face where that waste is needless, and how could you go about reducing some of those things?
Yeah, sure. So time waste, first of all, I think it's simply what doesn't have value to your localization program, because it doesn't allow you to work efficiently, or it doesn't allow you to achieve your business objectives efficiently or at all. So I also think that time waste factors really depend on the localization and internationalization maturity level of a company. For example, in early stage localization programs, we may often see several time waste factors like manually preparing files for translation, or having to send instructions for translation every time, or clarifying questions in emails or outside of the translation tool in general, or manually creating projects, project estimates, maintaining terms and glossaries. But even in more mature companies, we can also see time waste factors. For example, automation may not still part of the entire workflow, and projects may still need to be created manually. Or, for example, questions are still answered in several spreadsheets, or, for example, not all possible technologies like NMT or now more than ever large language models are leveraged enough in the process. So how to overcome this challenge and remove this time waste factor? So first of all, of course, a TMS is a must nowadays, right? So it addresses most, if not all, the challenges that I was mentioning before. But being able to integrate a TMS in an entire technology ecosystem with connectors and API-driven workflows is also really a real time saver, right? So beyond also translation and translation technology, I also think that other factors, important factors, can also significantly reduce time waste. For example, adopting a more standardized onboarding process, or aligning with engineering teams, right, as Robert also was mentioning, for example, on how to avoid internationalization issues. And finally, right, so reduce the time that you spend on fixing these issues afterwards when it's late. Or, of course, it needs to be clear, like how to run a successful QA process so that issues don't need to be addressed when it's
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sarah. I've got so much I want to ask about that, but we've got time pressing on. So I just need to quickly go through a couple of notices, and then we can get straight to the questions. We've got a localization playbook. It features a number of fantastic interviews, including our interview with Robert. So I think it is being posted in the chat right now. If you are enjoying the session, please do check that out. The main thing that I wanted to say, so we are, this August, we're going away on the alignment summer break. So we've not got another episode until September. On September the 13th, we've got a fantastic episode coming up. We're being very good, and we're not telling you who are the speakers because it is not yet signed off by their PR teams. But they're really, I think it is our most exciting panel to date. We've got with the exception of this one, of course, we've got an author and VP of a massive company who's literally written the book about globalizing your business. We've got a director at a gaming company, and we have a senior localization professional at an app that is used for sending messages that I have used several times today already. So huge companies, really exciting people. And the subject is all about data and getting that data, that global data, and making a more inclusive product process on the back of that data. Please do sign up, and then come in September. We'll be announcing the speakers sometime in mid-August when we've got the go-ahead from all of the PR teams. Love to see you there. If you like the sound of XTM and you need a little bit of help in choosing your TMS system, we'd like to just share with you that there is a quiz you can take, and that will help sort you to the right piece of software. In our previous webinar, whether or not you saw it, there was somebody asked about building their own software, and they were told, absolutely not, buy something off the shelf. So it's great to see a process to help you select software that can help you. So do check that out. I think we're putting the link in the chat as well with that one. And then final link, I promise, and then we will get back to the questions. We are letting so this is an exclusive offer that we're allowed to give to attendees of the alignment only. It's not something that we can offer to everybody. So do take advantage of it because it's very exciting that we're allowed to give it away. And that is a free functional test. So if you would like to see a little bit about how global up testing works, click on this link, sign up, follow the steps, and then when you qualify, you will be allowed to use our service for free to try it a couple of times, and then maybe we'll go from there. So those are the 3 notices. I'm finally able to get back to the questions. Thank you for bearing with me through them. I want to jump straight into people who've asked questions in the chat because they've been waiting for them. Gleb asks, what can be done with processes in order to make things better? Like, what if we include things like translation quality evaluation before dealing with testing or implementation of broader MT use? Any tricks that you guys use? So I guess a question there on how to make processes in localization more efficient. Would any of our speakers like to come in on it? Can I tempt any of you out? Daphne's got up her hand. I saw you typing an answer.
I'm happy to. I'm happy to answer. I would say this is really my humble opinion. I think like to implement things like translation quality evaluation, first of all, it's absolutely crucial. No matter, I think, whatever content type that you're delivering. But you can do it in a way, there's like industry standards like MQM, DQF model that can actually be used to evaluate both human translation and machine translation, and also machine translation post-editing process. I think using things like those kind of industry framework, first of all, that's like just like the very first step to start with. But to, I think, answer the question, like, when should we do it and how often we should do it? Again, it really depends on, I think, your content type. That say, you know, for more customer facing content, we actually want to do it more frequently. And in general, there are 2 ways to do it. You can also choose to do it actually after you already ship the content to users, or you can also choose to do it while you are like in the process of actually, you know, creating localization output. I wouldn't say there's like right and wrong for either approach. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve with the results that you're getting. So that's at different companies I work for, sometimes we actually use the first one that I talk about, which is we have quality evaluation after we already deliver to users, and we do it on a more maybe quarterly basis, just so, and we do it especially with a third-party independent auditing vendor that can give us that, you know, high level, more unbiased evaluation output, or we can also choose to do it within the localization steps before we even go ahead and do the testing. So that we can give more immediate feedback within that, say, the CAT tools, within the TMS tools, directly to the reviewers, to the translator who's actually tackling on that. So I think it really depends. Again, it can use for both MT and MCPE, and sometimes you actually don't need to use it, especially if you know already this vendor has been working with you and they have consistently be providing, you know, high quality localization. You can also just straight, you know, if it's application, just go ahead and do LQA testing. So again, my answer, I know, is very broad. It really depends on content type, and also depends on what kind of outcome you really want to get from what you decided to take on. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Daphne. I'm keen to just touch on a couple of questions from the entry form as well. So I've got a question here. In your experience, this is to the whole panel, are there any low-hanging fruits to improve your speed and quality processes that are something that's really easy, that made a difference when you first started doing it? Can I tempt anybody to come in on that? No? Okay.
I can take a stab. I can take a hack. Maybe this will give somebody else something to build on. For us, it was essentially one thing that was low-hanging fruit in the sense that it didn't require any any major monetary investment, is just cleaning up work streams. This is actually kind of going to a question in the Q&A as well with Clara around there's oftentimes this connection between the localization team and the developer team that seems to be a little bit tighter than it needs to be. They can be decoupled using technology. That proved to be a pretty low-hanging fruit for us at HubSpot. When we decouple, we let the localization specialists do their thing in one environment, and just tied it to our dev environment, it actually sped things up dramatically, because then we weren't necessarily having to have these back and forths in systems that the two teams didn't understand. The localization team didn't have to be in the dev environment having conversations, and the dev team didn't have to be in the TMS environment having conversations. We were able to clean a lot of that up. So for us, that was a pretty low-hanging fruit, and hopefully that goes to some degree to answer Claire's question. I saw Abby, you were also chiming in there.
Thank you. Sarah, you put up your hand as well. Did you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, sure. Well, no, I think, right, from my perspective, I can, of course, focus more on tools and technologies, right? So before it was much more complex to adopt, for example, machine translations, right? And right now, it's really something that everyone really uses or is about to experiment with. Machine translation can dramatically speed up the translation process. Of course, what we mentioned so far in the panel, like clear objectives around the quality of the machine translation, when post-editing is needed, when not, measuring, benchmarking the quality. Those are all critical factors. But really the technology around translation is really what speeds things up, but also process guidelines. So especially when you start adopting a new technology, the change management can be quite intense. And there's also, I think it's a segue to one of the other questions that were raised in the Q&A. So why are we not able to automate everything? Well, because actually automation also comes at a cost. So the ROI is great, but of course at the beginning you have to build a business case for it. So change management is a really important factor, making sure that you are clear on the business objectives that you're trying to achieve. Also making sure that you get the buy-in from the stakeholders that also play a key role, a crucial role in automation. So you need, for example, buy-in from your IT department, or if you're from your marketing department and somebody needs you performing country review in a different tool or not at work, right? So it all requires really negotiation skills, right? To also get things done.
Can I quickly ask, I don't want to spend very long on AI, because I know that it has the potential to totally derail this webinar and become an AI webinar. But can I just quickly ask whether anybody has in the panel has made a change in terms of how far they translate using machine translation, or whether they have started incorporating AI or plan to in the kind of near term, in the next 6 months, the last 6 months?
Yeah, I was just typing my answer and going back to that machine translation use, actually. So kind of going back to that question in particular on the understanding the quality, there are many ways that you can understand the quality. There are statistical metrics such as blue, LEPL, things like that, where you can get that quantified metric straight away. In the other hand, you can also understand it from a qualitative review. So you have a piece of machine translation and establish your standard on your quality, and then ask human reviewers to give a rating. Usually better when it's done as a blind test, not to tell reviewers where or how this piece of translation has come from. So there are many ways that you can understand, what is the quality of machine translation, and in an ongoing basis, you can put in regular check-ins, as well, just to make sure that nothing is dipping down or performing unexpectedly. In terms of, the question, Adam, you were asking about whether there is an adoption or MT. At RIS, definitely yes, and it is largely driven by the volume of the translation that we're managing. Last year, financial year, we dealt with, 65 million translated words, and I don't know what is that scale to a lot of the business, like quite big. So again, it's kind of driving us into, resorting to the technology and how it is helping us in the right way as well. And this is all based on the understanding of the quality of it, and also, like I mentioned in the earlier speech, the risk, whether it is the level of risk that you can afford to, and what is the impact of that risk is playing on your business, on your customers. So definitely, there is already machine translation adoption at RS, and there are new technologies coming up as every single day we speak. Neural machine translation, customized domain, large language models, etc., etc. Firstly, to understand that quality, and then whether this is a level of risk that you can afford as a business and for your customers.
Fantastic. I'm going to take the opportunity to share the results from the poll now. So just because I know that people watching the recording won't be able to see them. But so if you're watching after the fact, the half of respondents have said they somewhat agree that quality suffers due to pressure to release quickly in their organization. 33% have said they strongly agree. 17% have said they neither agree nor disagree, and then nobody has disagreed. So we've got a bell curve that is peaked over somewhat agree. Is that what everybody in the panel expected? Is that roughly in lines with what you guys would expect? Do you think that most businesses do tend to have their quality suffer and are unable to kind of get to the speed they want without compromising quality? Would anyone like to react to that?
I'm happy to take that again, if that's
No,
right.
that's it. Please do.
Yeah, and I was literally like smiling when I saw that poll coming out earlier in the call, because it's such typical leadership talk, isn't it? I want to get to the market quickly, but I also wanted to get that done well. And you know, I kind of really agree with what Abby was saying earlier. You know, it's not like you have to choose one in order to sorry, you don't have to sacrifice one in order to achieve the other. And you know, there is you know, definitely things that can be run on parallel. But it is also, you know, a good opportunity to force us to think, what is most important to you? What is your priority? And that will be based on the value that you want to drive most to your customers. And also is kind of a good reflection, you know, to ourselves, as in, what are the right things that we need to do? Sometimes, you know, people might be, you know, worried about, you know, I don't have enough resource, I don't have enough time, I don't have, you know, enough availability to get things done within given time. But it's not a bad thing to me personally, because like I said, it really forces you to think, what are your priorities and what is most important to you, and then work your list down.
I'm going to return to one of the questions from the entry form. So this person has asked about LSPs and asked, how do you get LSPs to move faster? And I wonder whether that is something anybody has experience with here. Obviously, is it maybe more difficult to squeeze someone for speed if they're from an external organization? Does anyone want to come in on that one?
Sure, I can jump in. We've been working on the product side at HubSpot. We've been working with the same LSP now for as long as I've been at HubSpot, so 10 years. And I think that is one of the ways that you actually, over time, increase speed. You get linguists that are familiar with your content, familiar with your lexicon, and they're able to turn things around much faster. Also, there's a double benefit, because the comments back and forth between maybe your internal localization team and your LSP just become a lot faster over time. So I would say, obviously, this isn't necessarily feasible for everybody, but if you are able to establish a long-term relationship with an LSP, it's been highly, highly valuable for us.
Can I get anybody else to come in on that? Besides long-termism, is there any other thing that you can do or you've done to help with your LSPs? Daphne?
Yeah, again, really second what Rob said, the long-term LSP partnership, I think that's very crucial. I think it's also, it's funny how like we say, oh, how do you get them to move faster, right? And I think it's also, we need to think of how can we as clients, as our part of, you know, like also in the relationship, to help them do their job better. Like we need to get them what they need, like communication, like more fluid communication, like when we talk about project requirements, what's our expectation of output, we need to be really transparent, you know, no guessing game with the vendors, to let them figure out, oh, what, you know, Riot's gonna like, what Riot's gonna dislike. Also help them know how to prioritize. A lot of time we just throw things over the wall, which shouldn't be the case anymore for most of us. Like, need to help them know what to prioritize first, what's considered low priority, high priority, and throughout that process, again, it's partnership. All our expectations to our, you know, vendor is going to be different from, you know, content to content, case by case. So I think also provide them more timely feedback and have set up like more formalized like quarterly business review. It's all like really crucial way to gonna help us to move faster together as we continue to scale. Like we grow, our partner also gonna grow. So it's really a partnership, I would say.
Nora, I can see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I totally agree with Daphne on that. Clear communication, feedback loop, and no guessing game. That's very important. I would like to add one more thing, that it provide as much context as possible, because our linguists don't really work on the product So they really need all of the references, all the material, all the images, the contact. The more contact we provide to them, the better the translation they can get to. And that's including like a link, website, reference material, previous translated materials, everything that would really help the linguists and the vendors.
Fantastic. Sarah, I've got we've got 3 minutes left. So over to you quickly, Sarah, but
Yeah.
answer
So
short.
from this perspective, just to add, because I also remember when I was on the client side, it was also really time waste for our LSPs, the in-country review process. So if you have one, make sure that it's streamlined, that you are engaging reviewers that are really subject matter experts, but also know how to approach that review task and do it in a way that just makes your LSPs additional time.
Cool. I've got one final question for the panel that is from the entry form. So just in terms of identifying what kind of quality process you should put on what kind of content, with content going live in so many countries, and we talked a little bit about relating it back to business goals. I wonder whether you guys have any framework on, I don't know, different speeds of quality, whether something should go down that machine translation chute or needs the kind of human treatment. How do you plan around that? Does anyone want to come in on that one? Nora, I can see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I would say it's all really depend on the requirements and the outcome. What do we want to achieve here? If it's just a document for like internal use, or is that we can use maybe machine translation, but if a marketing document, a legal document is very highly sensible and it will be very customer facing, so we would definitely use a human touch on that. And also depending on the timeline as well, if we want to do it like right now, or do we have time to wait? But I would say deciding between speed and quality come with a lot of factors, and that is something I would strongly advise to talk to the stakeholders in the company, talk to different teams, and see what are their goals, what do we want to achieve, and then evaluate what is the best ways to do that. And that could be a combination of machine translation and both editing. Yeah, but it's never gonna be a one size fits all. So really have to talk to communicate to different stakeholders and decide what do we want to achieve and come from there.
Thank you very much. So thank you everybody for joining us. I'm going to hand over to Faye to give her final answer, but I just want to say thank you to people who do have to drop out right now. Again, we'll be sending an email to all of you who attended after with the link to those different things that we mentioned, including crucially the September webinar. I'm really excited about it. Don't forget us over the August break, and excited to see you there. So thank you very much for everybody who has to leave now. Faye, you've had your hand up. I'm going to pass over to you.
Yeah, I did. So again, it's one of my favorite questions actually, and it's kind of very relevant to what we're doing in RS as well, because we provide a vast range of products at RS, 700,000 of them, on top of the new products and the maintenance, efforts that is going on. So kind of in terms of how do we triage the translation service to maximize the return of investment, because we have products like single board computers. Don't ask me what I do. We do have products of single board computers, and we also have product copies about toilet paper as well. Believe it or not, we do sell toilet paper, those blue rolls, the industrial style, as part of our core offering of PPE solution. So again, selection between a single board computer versus toilet paper. What would you do, right? Where would you want to put your money in a more value-driven, copy as a single board computer over, toilet paper? The question is about how do you get there, right? And what are the elements you're selecting to determine the triaging of your translation service? For example, you can have that category element, whether that falls into an electronic category or, a toilet roll category, which is the case for RS. Or, you know, if there is a strategic supplier that gives you the product that you want to prioritize a little bit more, or, you know, if there's more commercial metrics like this product, this category's got a low conversion, but I want to give it a boost by probably giving a better level of translation service. So again, a lot of different elements that you can play with.
Fantastic. I want to be respectful of people's time. So this is going to be the last answer from Nora. I can see you've got your hand up, Nora. If you could keep it brief, and then we will close the webinar. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. But Nora, over to you.
Oh, actually, I already said that. Sorry.
You already spoke.
Okay, I should take my hand out.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to everybody on this call for joining, and a huge thank you to all our speakers. If you have enjoyed this webinar, just one final plug, you can come back on the 13th of September. We'll have another panel, another topic. That time it's going to be data. And if you want to hear more about global app testing, you can take advantage of the link that we put in the chat, which offers you a free test, or you can chat to us anytime. One of our salespeople will be very, very happy to talk about your QA and the way that you do localization with you. Thanks very much all. I'm now going to end the webinar for everybody still here. So thanks very much for coming, guys.